There we go. So good evening to you, Sarah David from Spartan FX, and welcome to tonight's webinar, Transferring Money to and from Portugal. Sarah, how are you?
I'm well. Thank you for having me this evening. It's really nice to be here.
It's great to have you here. And people are here tonight to find out exactly how to do that, to transfer their money to and from Portugal, whether it be for the big house purchase or, as you sometimes say, to pay the pool man as part of living the dream here when they're here in Portugal. So take it away, Sarah. Actually, the first question I've got is one my mum asked me today. I want to open an account. I'm recommending you to my own mother. and what she said to me was, why are they called Spartan? Can we start there?
Yes, we can. So why we're called Spartan is really one of the directors is really sort of big on history, and that's where that stemmed from. So he wanted to be like a Spartan. Big sort of, I think the shield and the emblem is kind of trust and strength, and we want that kind of trust with our customers and the sort of safe and secure of your payments. Felt it was kind of a strong name for Spartan FX. What's nice as well is I've been in the industry about 15 years now, and there are competitors out there, and generally they have very similar names, so that can get very confusing. So at least it's sort of different and it stands out.
Well, and my mum's right as well. She guessed right. So thank you for that. So yes, where do we begin?
Well, firstly, I'd just like to say a big thank you to the members that have used us already. If anyone is on tonight, we've had some lovely reviews and comments. I see it on our FIFO, but also when I'm on the radio. So really nice to hear. And some of the comments are just lovely, not what I'd expect, but they say things like they feel like they're part of the Spartan FX family, which is wonderful to hear. And we really want that. Family is really important to us as a business. All the directors, they have children. It's really important, the family element, and the way that they treat their employees as well. So hopefully that does come across in our service, but certainly customers and family come first for Spartan FX.
Yeah, great. And already, yes, that you're being backed up by a lovely testimonial, a simple one, but great service from Spartan, ! So thank you very much, Denise, for that. So folks, do get your questions in. As I said, Sarah will tell us about Spartan FX now and the best way to move your money around and why you should use Spartan. And I will get those questions to Sarah after she's spoken for a little while. So Sarah, please.
Yes, so the people that don't know us, Spartan FX is the name, so you know that. We started in 2018. The directors and myself have all been in the industry 15, 20 plus years. So there's a lot of experience there. And they just felt that it could be done better and really get back to that sort of personal service. The key thing for us is to have that relationship with our customers so that we can help them, handhold them through the process, really just make payments quicker and easier for our customers. I mentioned the FIFO review. We have one. We're award-winning for our customer service, which is fantastic as well. Obviously touched on my own experience, been in the industry 15 years, started in doing travel money, then managed some people at the airports, and then moved into commercial foreign exchange, which is what really this is called, the bank-to-bank transfers, helping businesses and individuals. Some of you have met Ben on the radio show as well. He's got about 15 years in the industry, but also previously to that, he used to work in the property industry for a real estate agent. So he's got a lot of experience in buying and selling of properties as well, which I'm sure comes across. And there are other members of the team. I know some of you spoken to Neil and also Alistair, and I felt had a good service, which is fantastic. So there are other members that you can speak to as well, but you'll see Ben on the show soon.
Fantastic. Yes, I've not met Neil yet, but I'm looking forward to meeting Neil. He is a name that's come up from people as part of that family vibe and getting to know people, which of course is a massive differentiator for you. I don't know if you want to go there straight away, but this is a very, very personal service that you offer, isn't it? Unlike some of the other FX services that are around. This is a key differentiator for Spartan.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So what I can do is just talk about sort of the differences between us and the bank, for example, and then why, as I know some people have mentioned that in the past. So really the bank, for example, where we find the main differences is one is the rates of exchange. So we had a customer that used us recently for transferring US dollars into euros. It's about 300,000. They made the transfer and then they called their bank just to see what rate they would have offered them. 45 minutes later, they're still on the telephone with their bank. They still hadn't managed to get through to the right department and they still didn't manage to get a rate. So they gave up. So then they did another transfer through us, a similar amount. And again, they called their bank just to see what price they would have offered them, just for curiosity more than anything, I'd imagine. 30 minutes later, they did get through to the right department and the difference in the rate was 1.5%. So we saved them about $2,500. So it can vary. Some banks are slightly more competitive than others. Some we see about a 3 to 4% difference. It can vary from bank to bank, but usually there is a difference there. So first and foremost is the rate that your bank will be offering you. We can offer better rates. The other thing as well with the rate when you use your bank is that if you do manage to get through to them and you get a quote, that rate can't be honoured there and then. What happens is actually the rate you get is when the money's actually exchanged and transferred by your bank. So within that time, depending, it could be the same day, it could be the next day, depending on the bank cutoff times, you may find that if the rates moved between that quote and when the bank has moved the money, then you may end up with more euros, which that would be a great problem to have, or you're going to have less euros, which means that especially if you were paying somebody, a third party, or you're paying for a property and you've got a specific amount that you need to transfer to that bank account, your money could be short. How do you know how many pounds to send, US dollars, if you're not quite sure on the rate? So that then means you might have to top it up again. So it's a hassle, but also could incur extra cost there. So at least by using a specialist, the rate that you agree is the rate that you're going to get, then you know exactly how many euros you're going to get in that account. So
I suspect not a lot of people know that. So when you're talking on the phone to a bank and they give you a rate, that's indicative and not actual.
Yes.
Don't think many people do know that, do they? Well, okay, and that's a bit like when you're at the cash machine and it shows you a rate on the screen. Do you want this? Don't you want it? And generally speaking, my advice to people is not to take the rate being offered on the screen. Is that for the same reason? Because it's not going to be what that says anyway.
Well, there's a couple of things with that. So there's sort of two elements. One is, if you're doing bank-to-bank transfers, the rate won't be what's quoted by your cashier in branch or over the telephone. It's when they exchange. But when it comes to sort of travel money and that side of things, it works slightly differently. What you tend to find is that the rate that you are quoted, so if you did get in cash or perhaps maybe it is on the ATM, is they generally set the rate for the day in the morning. So for that whole day it'll be set. So if there are rate movements, it's just that rate that's set for the day. Okay,
so you would agree, don't take that rate on the screen there. But then again, you'd say don't get your money out in bigger amounts and don't rely so much on the ATMs anyway.
Yeah, when I did a year abroad in America when I was at university, and I didn't have a bank account. It was difficult to open for a student just being over there for less than 12 months really. So I had to use my debit card at the ATM, and that was something that they told us even then, that if you're going to get money out of the ATM, you always get it out in large, not just get 20, 50 US dollars, you get it out in your bigger tranches because that will be cheaper. Okay, all right. Sorry for that deviation there. But that's a very practical thing that I think people would like to know about when they're abroad and not quite sure what to do, and you're standing in the front of a queue at a cash machine or the multi-banco here. Do you want to say a little bit about the rates at the moment? Because we are living in interesting times, aren't we? With a high pound, for example, that we didn't expect to see right now. Yeah, so the rates at the moment, well, I was going to say sort of really that'll go nicely into sort of one of the comments I was going to make about what moves the market and how that all works. So at the moment, if first of all, I'll say that I'm going to touch on sort of sterling euro and US dollar euro. We do have clients that are worldwide. We have clients that are in Hong Kong, in Australia, Singapore, Canada as well. So if you have any other questions about any other pairings, please obviously get in touch and we can cover that. Some of the examples I do have in this webinar happen to be those first two pairings. But as I said, it's not because we can't service other customers, it's just we happen to have those examples. So we talk about sterling euro at the moment. we have just slipped off the high. Earlier in the month, we were nearly at 24-month highs, over 120, which is fantastic. In the UK, with the inflation is slowing a little, but it's still reached a 30-year high. The main issue at the moment is that energy costs are rising. All costs are going to be rising for us, national insurance contributions and food, which I think is sending people to a little bit of a panic. But the positive overall is that the UK economy is actually recovering from the pandemic, which is great. We had a little bit of a blip with the Omicron variant, but it still grew. So the main focus really this year is inflation and interest rate hikes. That's kind of what we're focusing on. And similar in the US, to be honest, the Fed minutes came out recently and showed that the main thing that they were talking about was around rate hikes, and the market still expects a rate hike next month. The other thing that's probably going to be pressing on euro in the short term is what's happening with Eastern Europe, with Russia and Ukraine. So there's definitely one to watch there with that as well.
Okay, all right, thank you. So yeah, a little bit of an indication of what's going on in the markets. Volatile times, of course. Taking you back to the sort of more mundane things in the bank and cash machines, things like that. IBAN number. Until some people thought of coming to Portugal or Europe, they didn't know what an IBAN number was. And it comes up, doesn't it, when you start moving money into Europe? What is an IBAN number? Beginner's guide.
Yeah, so basically, simplified, it's just a international way of identifying a bank account, essentially, that's really been agreed. So for Portugal, the IBAN is 25 characters long, and will include the character code, the country code, which is PT, which is at the beginning for Portugal. Next is the check digits, which for Portugal, these are always 50. So you'll see that after the PT.
Oh, yeah.
Then after that, you've got a 4-digit code, which is the bank code. Essentially, it's identifying the bank. So like Millennium Bank, for example, the different banks, that's what that identifies. And then the next 4 is the branch code. So it's actually identifying the branch code itself. And then you've got 11-digit bank account number, which is then unique to that person. So if you've got an account in Portugal, that will be unique to you, and that will be your identifier as your account within that as well. And then some national check digits on the end. But that's essentially the breakdown of the IBAN. And usually what we find the biggest problem is that, going back to the banks, is that they don't seem to have a lot of experience sending money internationally. We've had a UK customer that had to go to a couple of different branches until he got someone that knew what they were doing. We have had customers call us from the bank. We've spoken to bank, they've put us on with the bank teller. Just they're not familiar with it. Similar sort of to the customers on the whole, going through different departments for 45 minutes, because again, why can't you get through to the right person? Will the right person give you the right information? We've had bank cashiers or people on the other end of the phone give customers the wrong side of the markets, the wrong rate. Years ago, I rang my bank just for a comparison to see what they would offer me. And again, similar, couple of departments in, and the woman, she was, bless it, she was really trying to be really helpful. So it's not to say that it's sort of a problem with the staff and then they're not helpful, but obviously not her area of expertise. She referred to the exchange rate as the interest rate through the whole conversation. So I don't really have the faith that she knew what she was really talking about. So wow. Yeah, that's where you may find some problems.
Yes. Well, okay. And one of my favorite stories from an indication of your very personal service is Ben has called banks, hasn't he, in the United States to explain and walk people through this, which is pretty handy.
Yeah. And then also, not just a WhatsApp call, I think it was a WhatsApp video as well.
Very good. Then, okay. That must be quite a day in the bank, yeah. So you got Ben on WhatsApp with audio and video guiding somebody through the IBAN process. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think you've given us quite a lot on why it's good to use Spartan versus a bank. Are there any other reasons for doing that?
There is more options. For example, we've talked about, the service of hand-holding you through the process. We've talked about, obviously, the rates move, getting a good rate of exchange against the bank, for example. But the other important thing, which often gets overlooked, is that you could be getting the best rate, but at the wrong time. So because the rates are moving, there's a lot of things to consider. That's why it's really important that we speak to our customers as well. We get to know what's your situation and what are your time frames.
Yeah.
Because within that time frame, what's going to happen to the rate? Also, if you have to meet a certain deadline, like you've got a payment for your visa or you've got a payment for a property, you're given a date by when you need to make that payment, often obviously in the future. So when you come to work out how much that's going to cost you, you're using today's rate, which is irrelevant because nobody knows what the rate's going to be in the future. What happens if that rate moves against you and that property is more expensive? Obviously, yes, if the rate moves in your favor, that's fantastic as well. So there's two elements to our service. One is that we can monitor the rate for you. So yeah, if it's, for example, over 120 sterling euros, fantastic rate, that might be an optimal time to be purchasing your euros. Or if we see the rate moving against you, again, we'll let you know, because the other side really is about your budget and making sure that payments don't become more expensive for you. I've got a good example. I think it was in 2021. If, for example, you were selling US dollars and you're buying euros, and we're in March, for example. Now, if you've got a month to make that payment, that's your time frame. Within that month, the rate moved against you. So suddenly, on a 200,000 euro transfer, the rate movement is about 9,000 euros difference. And that's just in the rate movement. So what you could have done is you could have either fixed the rate in March when you need to make that payment in April, or we'll monitor the rate, and as soon as we start seeing it go against you, we'll let you know. So there's lots of different options. Again, it depends on you, your situation, what are your timeframes, what money you've got available, and looking at what the right option is for you.
That's great. This is what when I had the conversation with my mother about you. And sorry to bring, I mean, it does sound very kind of mundane again. But if you can explain Spartan to your mum, you can explain it to anyone. And that's not, I'm not being patronizing towards my mum. You know, my mum's, you know, what really made sense to her was I said, look, you can set a price and they'll buy it for you at a certain price. You know, they exchange for you at a certain price. Yes, okay. Connect me with these people. So you've got the Carl's Mum Award as well as your FIFO up on the wall in the office. So I was very glad to be able to tell her that. And again, yes, one of the benefits of using you. A reason why people would use their own bank, though, Sarah, would be familiarity, wouldn't it? Now, you know, banks. I think banks. My personal opinion is you know, they're quite sort of prehistoric dinosaur type organisations, aren't they? And they are being challenged massively by new movers in the finance. What do they call it? Fintech. In the fintech area, they are being challenged big time, aren't they? And still they are hanging on in there, you know, staying with their old ways. And part of that, of course, is people do trust the old banks, even though they've been hurt probably many times by them. These brands mean something to people. And you're a relative newcomer, and some people are finding out about you for the first time tonight. So what do you do in terms of insurance trust and for people to put their money with you with confidence?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think first and foremost, obviously we've got our reviews, so you can see that lots of customers, even Expats Portugal customers, have used us. Yeah. So there's that kind of trust that other people are using us and have had a really good experience. The other thing as well is that the way that we've set up the business is that we partner with a large tech firm called Currency Cloud. So you can obviously look them up if you want to. They've just been bought out by Visa, but they do about 2 billion US dollars a month. So they're a very huge firm. And we basically outsource some of the online system, for example, so that we can have a very good online system for our customers as well. And through that, we're able to have the right licensing in place as well. So you've got a couple of things where the money's held. Obviously, the company's doing 2 billion, so they're very large, but also we have the right licenses in place to be dealing with people that are based in Europe. We're regulated obviously in the UK, FCA, but also in the US, we have the money transmitter licenses for each state so that we can deal with customers that are based in the US as well. And if anyone wants any more reassurance or just would like to ask any more questions around that, then obviously we can send more information to reassure them of who we are and where we're backed and where your money is held and it's safe. It's held in a tier 1 bank, Lloyd's, so the protections are in place similar to with your bank.
Great. Yeah, important to ask that question, I think, on behalf of people here. So when people are moving these big amounts of money, well, they don't have to be big, do they? Because we use the spectrum of the house purchase to the pool man who is cleaning the pool of the big house purchase. But what use cases have you got? What do people tend to be using your service for? And where else are they from in the world? Because we've focused there on the dollar and sterling. So if you could give us a few use cases of how people are using you and what for and where they are in the world, that'd be great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So actually, that's quite interesting because we've had some different ones recently, which is quite nice. So we've had people pay for furniture. They've paid an art gallery. They've paid an interior designer, purchased a car. It really can be anything. As long as there's bank account details, we can make that payment. And that's the other thing as well, which is quite good, is that we can make third-party payments. So in a customer recently who she's actually in the US, but again, a lot of the examples will still apply to wherever you are in the world. It's the same thing, that you're in your home country, you need to move money to Portugal. She needed a certain amount in her Portuguese account for her visa, but then needed to pay some other third parties. And she wasn't very confident with her Portuguese account, the bank's online system, in order to then make payments to these third parties. So what she did was we worked out how much she needed for her visa. We put that in that account. And then we paid from her account with us. We did it for her. We paid the other third parties as well. So sometimes, again, it's just that ease. If you're not as confident with another bank's online system to then make the payments onward, we can take care of that for you as well.
Superb. I thought you were going to say, thinking about the Good Morning Portugal gang and Expats Portugal, that you might be paying wine merchants, but you're very discreet as well, obviously. Talking of Good Morning Portugal people, we have this lovely feedback from one of the listeners. Spartan FX has mentioned numerous times that they can confirm the destination account. This is a really important thing, isn't it? For that, again, for the knowing that when you push the button, it's going to the right place. That's a terrifying moment, isn't it? Let's face it. I.e., that the money is going to the appropriate account and party, and that they can track a transfer from start to finish. That gives comfort. So, do you want to say more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's one of the big things that we do, is that we are checking the beneficiary account details on your behalf. A number of times, human error. You're given account details over email from even your lawyer, and maybe they're not correct, or they've missed a digit off, or whatever. So we're always double checking those account details, because, as I said, it's not to scare people, but if those details are wrong, goes to the wrong account, yes, you can get your money back, but it might take a little bit longer. Obviously, unfortunately, in that example, it's taken a little bit harder for that person to get it back. So it's just another check that we do, just to make sure that it is going to the right destination for you, and just give that peace of mind. And we keep you up to date through the whole process. Again, probably that security of your money, where's it at, gone into the ether. We just keep you in contact with you, and we'll let you know as soon as the money's hit any beneficiary account as well, so you know that it's there.
Yeah, let's face it, it's a whole lot easier than coming through with suitcases full of cash. Fantastic. So we've talked about the dinosaurs of the banking world, and obviously the new fintech world. And so can we talk about the question that often comes up, which you're very happy to talk about, which I think is great. And this is the comparison that's often made with Wise, who are obviously a fintech creature, and the comparison that is made between Spartan and Wise. What would you like to say about that?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a couple of things. One, personal preference. So some people will prefer purely online and to do it themselves and not speak to anyone. Some people have used Wise and had an absolutely great experience. So it's not that people aren't. All we see is that some people that come to us that have had either not bad experiences, but there's been a few things, or when we speak to people, they realize that they actually personally need that extra support. Also, it may be a case of you sat there now thinking, I can just do it myself. But actually, as we said, when you come to do it yourself, you're transferring maybe a large sum of money. It is a bit nerve-wracking pressing that button. So again, it's just really that kind of personal service. As I mentioned, we do have an online system, so you can go off and do it yourself if you really want to. But I think the benefit is that there'll be someone there just to answer your questions. We had a customer. So one of the things we do when you transfer money now, well, before, but also more so at the moment, is there's always money laundering checks going on, and especially on amounts sort of over 10,000, you may need to be providing some sort of documentation, which again is standard process. But what we do is we make sure that all of that's done up front, so that there's no delays in your payment further down the line. We had a customer that had used Wise, and he made the exchange, and then he came to move his money, and then they requested documents. So he sent them in, hadn't really heard from them. Turns out that the documents he'd sent weren't sufficient. He needed to send something else, but rather than have that interaction of what documents could I send in, that kind of correspondence wasn't there. And as a result, they said that the documents weren't sufficient, and then they cancelled the exchange. They exchanged his money back from euros to sterling and gave him his money back, essentially. So he still needed to transfer his money because he still needed to make his payment in euros. So had to make obviously another exchange, which he did through us. So he already lost some money just with the two exchanges there, with the rate movements, unfortunately, and the extra hassle. So again, it may be that you can provide the right documents, but especially if you're meeting any deadlines, you don't want to find that your payments held up from that perspective as well. So it really is sort of the personal. And we mentioned we take the calls by WhatsApp as well. So there's just always someone just to answer those questions. But also the guidance on the rates of exchange. I know that you can track a rate, possibly can do a forward contract, which is fixing a rate for a future payment. But again, if you've never done that before, you may be not sure how that works or when the right time to do that is. You don't want to find that, be great if you want to achieve a fantastic rate, but if it's never going to get there, it's a bit pointless putting that in at that higher rate, if that makes sense. But fixing the rates can be beneficial. So we've got an example of, again, it's not just large amounts, small amounts as well. Again, a customer who used us back in 2020. It was a US customer, and they actually moved to France, but again, it's US dollars to euros, so it will apply to most people. And again, even if you were in Canada or Australia, the UK, you're still converting to euros, so it would still apply to you as well. So in 2020, they had moved to France, and they were getting a pension and rental income. I think it was about 4,000 US dollars a month roughly that they were getting, and at the time they wanted to fix the rates. So they knew exactly how much that they were then going to get in euros to live off. So it was June 2020, and they fixed the rate at 110. So in that 12-month period, we did see the rate move up to 120 and 124, but they were still transferring their money at 110. So what it actually meant was that within the 12 months, we actually saved them about 3,000 to 4,000 euros just on the rate fluctuations. So I think really the key thing is just to bear in mind that they can impact the transfer. And while, yes, what's the rate we can save you against TransferWise, the bank? Yes, that is important, but actually sometimes you can save just as much through managing the exchange rate fluctuations. And from the update that I just gave earlier, going back to what moves the market, there's so many things that move the market that it's not really possible for you perhaps to keep on top of everything, which is our job. So it can be anything from, we've talked about natural disasters, the pandemic, war and conflict, economic performance of a country, government and politics. So here in the UK, we've got Boris and his Partygate, but also data that's coming out and sentiment. And I think
it's safe to say we've got a full house at the moment, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. A lot of boxes.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. Well, so you're all over that. I mean, I heard you say as well, which is a nice combo, that there is a straightforward electronic system that people can use. They don't have to speak to somebody every time, but I'm guessing there's a kind of a trajectory for people in the early part and transferring the big amounts and migrating, you do want that personal service, and you want to do a test transfer. You want to talk to people about the best time to exchange the money, holding in the account, getting set up, having a long lead time, and all those sorts of things that are really important to have the face-to-face, as it were, but the personal service, talk to somebody on WhatsApp. But then once you've got used to it, you can go to a straightforward electronic system and do your own thing on Spartan. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
And I think generally you're right, that's the process that people tend to go through. A lot of the customers we find, even though it's there, they just pick up the phone, send us an email, it's quick and easy, and that's kind of how they prefer to work. But obviously that option is there, and as they get more confident, they can go to do it themselves, or they can just do it themselves anyway. And if they've got a couple of questions, they just ring us up and double check some things. So it really depends on the person. But again, it's offering that extra flexibility. So I think a couple of things, which is again what you mentioned about the bank sort of not having, sort of operating in an old way, because with the bank, if you didn't have an account open in Portugal, how would you take advantage of the rate? You wouldn't, because where they're going to put those euros. So the thing with us is that we can hold the money on account for you. So if you wanted to take advantage of the rate, you can do two ways. One, we can buy it all up front and we just hold on to it until you're ready. And we don't charge for that. We know that Wise charge on amounts over 15,000 euros. So watch out for that if you're holding funds. But it's completely free for us. Or one of the other things we can do is I mentioned about fixing rates for a future payment. In order to do that, we can actually do it with just a 10% deposit. It doesn't cost a charge, it just reserves the currency, and then you pay the 90% when you need it. So some people, if perhaps your money's tied up in a specific interest account, you can still maybe keep it there if you want to as well. Or you don't have all the money available now and it's coming in the future. That might be another way to do that. The other thing is with something that was on the forum, I know with Wise, that they mentioned about somehow guaranteeing the rate for 48 hours.
Oh yeah.
Now what the explanation of that, which you can find on there, is that a guaranteed rate is guaranteed for a specific time period, which is 48 hours, but I think it goes down to 24 during the week. And they're guaranteed for all of your transfers, and then they'll do it until you send the money. So as long as they receive your money on time, you're locked into that rate. But then they say if your money doesn't reach them in time, they'll still convert it, but they'll use a mid-market rate. So they'll use a different rate if your money doesn't come in time.
Yeah.
So there's two things there. One, when you buy the currency just standard as and when you need it, which would be what that would be, we call it a spot contract. That's what it's called in this industry. And you have 48 hours to pay. So that's a standard process. So we offer that. So you've got 48 hours technically to pay us. But where we differ is we do offer a bit more flexibility. So after the 48 hours, we don't, is what Wise were doing would be converting it just whatever rate is at that point at mid-market, which possibly could be more expensive if it's a different rate. Here we offer a bit more flexibility because we understand it can be challenging sometimes. Maybe there's delays, if you're receiving money from a sale of a house, from a lawyer or your bank, there may be a delay in the payment. So we're much more flexible. We'll actually keep hold of that rate for a bit longer for you. So that's why it's really important that we speak to our customers.
Perfect. Okay. I mean, we're definitely not saying don't use Wise here. I think flexibility and a range of options is really important. But obviously, we recommend Spartan for the reasons you've heard this evening. And sometimes it's useful to have a card to use, which is something you don't do. You're not in that business, are you, Sarah?
No. So again, perhaps on small amounts, or they've got that card, which might be useful if you're traveling over there, don't have an account set up, and you need to pay for a meal in a restaurant, and you don't have a local account. Because if you do have a local account, that's always the best card to have, because there won't be as many fees, and it'll be easy, obviously cheaper to get that money out of the ATMs as well. So again, I suppose there's right solutions for different people and for different situations.
Yes, for sure. I mean, that's the big message, isn't it? Be prepared, have options, and be flexible, and certainly have Spartan as part of your armory in this, certainly with the big amounts. And other hacks then that you're aware of that others might not be at this stage, the things like international card readers, POA, power of attorney, and online bank limits. I know there's just three things that can get people falling at the first, as it were, because they've not done this before, whereas you've seen lots of people do it.
Yeah, so that's the other thing that we do say to our customers, and I say a lot on the shows, and is just do your research before you go. So there's two elements to it. One, from the rate perspective, it's never too early to be looking at the rates of exchange. People think, oh, I'm not moving, or I haven't got a property, or my deadline isn't yet. But as we've seen with rate movements, it might be advantageous to move your money at a specific rate and time that might be beneficial to you, or it might be easier to move your money before you leave your home country as well. What we have seen with customers is that maybe every bank's different, that you might need to fill in some paperwork, that you might need an international card reader. We know that that's with some banks. It's quite, I think in the UK, we do get those, whereas I think in the US, you have to really apply for them. Not as many people have them. We have had one customer that actually gave her sister power of attorney, so that when she was over in Portugal, it was just easier for her to deal with that on her behalf.
Very good.
So again, it's just, often it could be on larger amounts. Again, it's sort of all around that security and kind of authorization aspect, that they may need you to come in branch if you haven't perhaps contacted them or spoke to them before you've gone. Which
might be inconvenient if you're already here.
Exactly.
Yes.
We've had customers that have had to fly back. So obviously that's a cost. Rates moved against them, that's a cost. So, and it's hassle. So you just don't want that.
Yes.
By just looking into this sooner rather than later, because you may find that you've made transfers while you're in your home country and it's gone through fine, but it might be slightly more difficult. Again, it could be on the size of amounts depending on the bank. There is some banks that won't make international payments. So again, it depends what kind of account you've got and what bank that you have. And also online limits as well on your internet banking. There will often be a limit. It varies from bank to bank. Sometimes it can be 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 of your local currency. So again, factor that in to any transfers that you're making. If you are reaching a deadline, even if you're not, you don't want to find you sat every day making a transfer. So you might be able to speak to your bank. They might be able to increase that for you.
Yes.
So again, it's always worth doing some of this research. If you are asked to sign any documentation before you go, often they may ask you to put beneficiary account details on there, so just watch out for that. That if you're using us, for example, you would put the account details, your account details with us on there, because that's where they'll make the transfer to. So bear that in mind. It's not your Portuguese account if you are using us. And the other thing which makes it a bit easier is the account's in your name. So with us, it's very similar to a bank account as well.
Okay, we've got some good questions coming in on that particular note there. But before we go to those, Sarah, what have we missed? What else do you need to tell us before we go to the questions here? I think that's been pretty comprehensive, isn't it?
Pretty much everything, to be honest. I don't think that I've got anything else really to add. I mean, the only thing that I think that we would just obviously like to add is that sentiments at the beginning that all of us have loved working with Expats Portugal members. You know, we look forward to working with you and helping you move to Portugal. And if you're new and you've not met us, we'd love to speak to you. It's free to have a call with us. Again, set up a WhatsApp call if that's easier for you. Just have a chat, have a feel for our service and see if it's right for you.
See, I'm guessing you're on quite a few, with those savings you've made, people, I'm guessing you're on quite a few Christmas card lists now, and maybe even postcards from Portugal. Are you okay with that? Receiving wish you were here postcards from Portugal while you're there in cold Blighty?
Oh, that would be lovely. Apparently we've got a storm coming. In fact, it's that bad that my friend works in insurance, and they've received some data that's quite worrying, that they imply there could be issues. And even
thank
my
you for sharing
insurance
that.
company
Yeah.
emailed me as well about these storms, that we need to sort of be tying down everything outside. There could be damage.
Yes. So anyone who just heard storms there, I think there are a couple of key points there. Where you saved someone €2,500, that was it. Everyone moved to the edge of their seat at that point. And the two storms Sarah just mentioned, it's in the UK. So fingers crossed and lots of love to the UK, but not here in Portugal, folks. So let's go to those questions. Thank you, Stephen Kaiser, for this one. Does Spartan offer joint accounts or directed beneficiary in the case something happens to the primary account holder? Good question, Stephen. Thank you for that.
Yes, so we need it so that in some situations, yeah, it's important also, like property purchases and things like that. They need, when the money comes in as well, it will then have both your names on it, which is also important for sometimes property purchases as well.
Yeah. Okay. So there you go on that. So we're hearing of IBAN, wrong IBAN number nightmares. So just underlining the fact, just make sure that that's right. There's a lot of numbers in there. Alan, I'm seeing 3 kinds of code abbreviations in international banking. They don't make it easy, do they? IBAN, NIB, and SWIFT/BIC. It appears that the IBAN is a 25-character code. I think that's what you said, wasn't it, Sarah? Yeah. Okay. Yep. So there you go, Alan. And you can ask a bit more about that if you wish when we go to the closed session for questions. Stephen, thank you for this one. Different Steve P. Hello, everyone. Does it make sense to use Spartan FX to transfer US dollars to euros steady every month? Let's say $5,000 from USA to Portugal. I guess this is monthly, Steve, right? What option is more useful, spot trade or forward trade?
Interesting. Well, there's 2. One, obviously, have the conversation with your dealer. It depends what's happening with the rates of exchange. What you can do is just do it every month if you want to, or like the example that I gave, that customer, we were able to fix that rate for a period of time. So we would fix all of that money up front in a forward contract, and then you would transfer money to us monthly, and we would just draw down on that and then send the euros out into the account that you specify. With that customer in the US, they did set up a standing order to us. It varies bank to bank. Some you might have to make a manual transfer, others we can do a standing order. And if you're in the UK, then we will be able to set up a direct debit for you.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And thank you for that resource there, Phil, as well. There's a useful resource there, IBAN.com, IBAN checker, online IBAN checker. So that's pretty good. Double checking there as well. I think we've given the game away already from our previous conversation. Austin, you're asking where the offices are located. You're in the UK, right?
Yes, we are in the UK. But as I said, from my years in foreign exchange, even UK customers, it's very rare that they come into the office. You could if you want to, more than welcome, but it is very rare. So most of what we do has always been telephone, email, but what's the benefit really? The extra benefit with Spartan is that we can do those on WhatsApp or a video call if you want, Zoom, whatever you want.
I think it's good that people can come in. So when they come in and say, thank you for those several thousand you saved us, here's a bottle of champagne, like they do at EI. I think it's good to have an open door policy. So good to hear that. But you'll have to fly to the UK. If you're moving to Europe, to Portugal, when you have a trip over to UK, you can go visit and thank Spartan there. Laurie the Magnificent, which is a name, she could almost be an employee with a name like that. Laurie Magnificent. Any good? This is a great question, because not all US banks are created equal, are they? Any good experience with US banks? That's like any at all. But what are the best banks to use? What work? Which put it a different way. Which are your favorite US banks that you like to work with, if any?
It really varies, to be honest, on lots of different levels. One, it depends on the account that you have with the bank. So while some banks are all right for some customers, it's not for others. It depends on what kind of account that you've got. We know that sort of people have brokerage accounts in the US, and they can be slightly more tricky too. They won't make an international payment, so you'll have to move the money from there to your regular checking account. Also, it depends as well on the state to state level. Can be the same bank, but operate slightly different within each state as well. So that's why it's a little bit more challenging for us to say, yeah, one bank's better than the other. And I would say it's probably the staff as well in the banks, to be fair.
I'm sure you're right. I'm sure, because that's true here as well. A good bank here in Portugal is one where you know somebody and can get some personal service. So I think that's something for the forum, really, isn't it? For people to share their personal experiences on the expatsportugal.com forum and say, look, you know, this bank, this branch is working well for me, as a little bit of a tip for people, or the other way around. Please help. You know, should I change bank, or what's your experience been like with the bank that I use? So try the forum for that, folks. I know that was a difficult question, Sarah, for that one.
No, but what we can do is going forward is that we can put that information maybe on the forum and say, right, this bank, this date, maybe that might be helpful.
Good idea. Yeah. So we can give them our own awards, can't we? Gravitate towards this particular brand and even branch in some cases. Okay, this is another great question from Brian. Thank you for this. The UK banks are closing accounts if you are no longer a UK resident. And there was a lot of talk about this, wasn't there, in these last few years? And we don't quite know how that's working out. It seemed like it was a bit of fear, project fear, maybe, I don't know. I don't know if this is happening or not. Should it happen that UK banks don't want to keep your bank account open if you've moved to Portugal? Can a UK military pension, for example, be paid direct to Spartan? So could people use you instead of their traditional UK bank?
Yes, so I know about this because we did hear about it. In fact, I'd say more towards the end of 2020, there was a bit of a thing about, but then it seemed to have gone a little bit quiet. And I haven't heard much more about it. So I think, again, maybe, I don't know, their internal policy, someone said we need to be checking this out, and now it's gone quiet. I don't know. But if that does happen, and it was one of the things we were sort of advertising, is that, yes, you can use us like a bank because the account is set up like a bank, and as far as it's in your name, so you can operate it very similarly, and we can receive payments from third parties into the account, whether it be friends and family, a lawyer, a pension. We can receive that into there. In regards to the military, we should be able to. It could be case by case, but there shouldn't be a problem.
My mum's going to love that as well. I have a private bank that deals with my sterling euro exchanges. Fantastic. And Brian adds to that question, if this is possible, would the fees make this worthwhile? Which brings us to the question which we didn't ask earlier on. How do you make your money?
Absolutely. So we make our money between what we buy and what we sell. So as far as what there's an interbank rate is what it's called, which is a market rate, which is what the banks are buying and selling at, and brokers are able to get access to those rates of exchange, which people like yourself, other businesses, don't have access to. So we're buying at that rate, and then we literally sell it at another. And the difference between the two is what we call a spread, which is the difference between where we buy and where we sell, and that's how we make our money. So it is transparent in that sense, because that's the only way that we make our money. We don't charge any transfer fees. So it's very, very clear.
Very good. And the best question so far, really, I have to say, is how can we contact Sarah at Spartan? And if one of my colleagues could answer that, that would be great, because every time I go off this browser, it crashes. So that would be great if someone could help me out with that, with the link to, well, you go to our business directory, expatsportugal.com, and into the business directory, and you can get a link straight through to Spartan there and open up your free account. We didn't mention that, did we? A free account, which you would, I'm sure, recommend opening sooner rather than later. Don't leave it till the last minute. A lovely testimonial from Tammy here, unsolicited. I have a great experience with Steve at Spartan FX. So another name to add to the Christmas card list. Their customer service is unparalleled. May I ask a blunt question? Oh, hold on a minute. May I ask a blunt question? It's not a problem. Sarah doesn't mind at all of my... She's blaming her husband. The highly suspicious husband would like to know, how does Spartan FX make its money? We just answered that question there. Is it from customer fees, or is it another way? But that question answered there previously, Tammy. And you can show your highly suspicious husband the recording of the webinar later on. Okay, I think that's just about... Oh, no, another one here from Susan Scott. This is a good one. Can money be transferred from Panama or other tax havens, right? We have run into problems since Panama Papers exposed tax haven abuses. Any issues there that you've noticed from your end, Sarah?
I have to double check. Off the top of my head, I couldn't categorically say yes, we do, without double checking. Majority of countries we can, and I know a few more have been added to the list that we couldn't previously. In some cases, there is some countries where maybe we don't deal with a local currency, but we could still deal with the country and euros, US dollars, or sterling. Often in those places, people are holding. So it depends. But yeah, I can double check. So it may be that we can do it if it's not the local currency, if we couldn't trade it, but I would just have to double check, but I can certainly let you know.
Susan, please reach out via the link that will be, there you go, sdavey@spartanfx.co.uk is the direct email there. Thank you very much, Jerry, for that. And Denise agrees with Tammy. Stephen is the best. Oh, that's going to ruffle some feathers, isn't it? At Spartan HQ. Telling me he's the best. Stephen is the best. So helpful and patient. A pleasure to deal with. There we go. Spartan FX says it's making money on spread, but I am sure that there are other fees, or there should be as well. That is a business, not a charity. What would you say to that?
Well, yeah, no, absolutely. We are a business, not a charity. So we do need to make money. But that is the only way that we make our money. And I would say that the other thing to bear in mind is that obviously the way that we have set up the business and the fact that, we don't have an office in Portugal, I know that. But again, I think that helps with keeping the overheads down. And that means we can pass our savings back to our customers. That yes, it would be lovely to have an office and come and see you all in Portugal. But obviously, the more offices and that sort of stuff you have, your costs are going up that you then have to start passing back to the customers. So it means that we can give a really good service, but still offer very good rates of exchange.
Okay, from Steve P, answering your question there, Steve. Tammy says, and Denise agrees, give Steve a raise. So there you go, memo back to the office. Steve will be delighted about that. And hopefully he's not, he might be working on some commission deal with Denise and Tammy there, possibly. Thank you very much, Sarah. It's been amazing. Who knew that it could be so much fun? I mean, that's another thing, as well as the personal service and all the other benefits that you mentioned. You make this an interesting conversation and a fun conversation to have. So thank you very much for being here tonight. We'll end the recording there and we'll go to some more personal questions of the nature that people might not want to share all over the internet. So thank you very much, Sarah. Indeed, sdavey@spartanfx.co.uk if you want to get in touch with Sarah there. Thank you so much.